We got Derek Falvey, which officially recently president of not only the baseball operations, the business operations. Derek, congratulations. Thanks for taking the time. And how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, thanks. Yeah, some have said congratulations, some have said condolences. You got too much on your plate right now, so I appreciate the support we've got across the organization.
So how many people in baseball now are controlling the baseball and the business side?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, every setup is different, right? You have different ownership groups, you have different people involved from the ownership group in terms of the way your business is run. I've been very fortunate for a lot of years to work for the Pohlad family, and they are going through a sale process right now and exploring a sale as a team. But when this happened, Joe Pohlad, who I've worked with now for 8 years, had asked me about some consideration of moving into this role as Dave St. Peter was going to go into the next phase of kind of his career. He'd been with the team 35 years, been the team president for more than 20. So this was an opportunity during the sale process to really set up the organization for some success going forward. I think Mark Shapiro is the only other one I know perfectly. He was a mentor of mine and someone I worked for a long time. So I've gotten to pick his brain. He'll help me along the way.
Well, is your stress level higher then? You're able to navigate both? Because that's the other part of it. It is two jobs that you're trying to focus on.
Yeah. I think the key with any job, and you know this, and everybody knows this in baseball, it's about the team you have with you.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's when I look at the group that we have leading the baseball side and the people who are running that, over the last 8 years, we've built a really good foundation, a really good group of people. And now you empower them to do their jobs. You give them a little bit more runway.
Yeah.
Same on the business side. As more as I get a better understanding of some of the folks there, we have some great people there. Dave's done it the way he's done it for a long time. It's going to be a little different now, but those people are going to get opportunities to really grow and develop and do the job the way they want to do it.
Right. And it's a process. Everything's a process here. And it takes, it's not just you're to count on other people to create something here. But again, it is a great title. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
And also, I love the fact, I'll tell you what, maybe it's just the Midwestern teams, man. We talked with the Guardians. We get to talk with you now. Is it just that like Midwestern hospitality? I don't know what it is.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's great. You guys are great. But also what I love is there's a lot of comparisons that I like to think about. We cover a lot in Baltimore here. And so now you've been overseeing, you've worked now with your time, the Guardians.
Yep.
Another smaller market. And then the Twins, where navigating that, and just we were joking about it before. You didn't have enough. You weren't going to put out the big contract, 8 years, 218 for Max Fried.
We came up just short on Soto.
Just short on Soto. You know what's crazy? We talked about this earlier, Brad and I. The Orioles sale of the team was $1.75 billion or whatever it is. Small change. And Juan Soto's contract was about half of that. When you think about
it's pretty unique,
right?
It's pretty unique.
So why don't you, if you don't mind explaining some of the challenges that you have? It's not that you don't want to be competitive. The past years, Carlos Correa is an example. You're willing to spend money, but it's just a reality of what you guys have to face when it comes to the bigger markets.
Yeah, the biggest difference in baseball, right, is you're working with a different denominator, so to speak. How you build out your roster, where you can invest, what dollars you're putting in different spots. And I learned this during my time in Cleveland when I was with the then Indians, now Guardians. Mark had said this to us. There's things you can control and things you can't control. Anytime focused on the things you can't control is waste of time, right? So in my world, I know what our payroll is. I know what our constraints are. And then I talk to ownership about how can we invest in other areas, right? Off the field, some of our development opportunities, what we can do in scouting. How do we better evaluate the talent and make sure the pipeline's strong?
Right.
And I think that's in the small to mid-market, that is your lifeblood. You have to figure out how to make sure that the pipeline is really strong. And I feel like we've been able to do that with Royce Lewis getting to the big leagues, with young pitchers getting there over the last couple of years. This is what we need to do to be successful over time.
Yeah, you got to have a good farm system. I still tell people with the Dodgers, for instance, the Dodgers have good players coming through their system.
No doubt.
They just so happen that they have a payroll that's infinite, and they can sign a guy who's a unicorn that can pitch. He's going to pitch again this year and hit 50 jacks and steal 50 bases like Ohtani, and then all the other star power that they have. That's the hand that they're dealt. But Minnesota, Baltimore now has obviously built up their system. They're going through similar things. Royce Lewis, I love that guy. I think that his talent is off the charts. Biggest thing for him is staying healthy.
Health, no question.
So one thing for you guys that you're focusing on with this winter meetings, like how are you trying to evaluate then with kind of the markets? Because the other part here is we just talked about Fried. The value of other pitchers now is going to go up here. Does that change your guys', I don't want to say like a philosophy, but that's one other thing you have to factor in as this market keeps rising?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about what we do here every year is we're trying to figure out how to find information here that will help us through the rest of the offseason.
Right.
Winter meetings are a big deal. Obviously, there's some big signings here, moments that happen. But we're laying a lot of groundwork for conversations that'll probably persist through the holidays and then into January and even late January. The off seasons are no longer about trying to get everything done at winter meetings. So we spend a lot of time talking to other clubs, making sure we understand the dynamics around what are they trying to do. Maybe we have overlap in trades. Maybe there's an opportunity should a free agent kind of miss out on where he thinks he's going, like make sure we're set up to be in the right spot after that. So it's always about focusing on our core philosophy, which is build from within and then figure out ways to augment the roster.
So do you have any, past stories that you could explain to give a better picture to people listening of what the winter meetings is like, or maybe one of your favorite stories that you've had to deal with, or one of them?
I mean, there's so many years that you go through this. They all blend together after a while. You kind of forget where you are. It's
sure.
Like, it's like, what year were we here? Oh yeah, I remember that. It was 2011. It's like, wow, that feels like forever ago now. But the thing I remember most about different winter meetings is the chance in your room to then go to another, group's room and actually see the interaction and how teams operate, because it's the only time of the year where you have a baseball operations group with another baseball operations group, maybe visiting with each other in person, right?
Yeah.
They don't travel around a lot. We're not in Baltimore all the time to be able to sit with Mike and his crew. I'll call Mike. We'll have conversations for sure, but it's not the same. And I think what you get out of that is you get relationship building. Yeah. And baseball is a game about relationships, as and the history and the depth of it all. I love being here, being able to see people that work around the game that you don't get to see every year.
And I think that's a really cool part to talk about, because I tell people, or tell our listeners, are going, a lot of the talks, they try to get away from all the chaos. As we're walking around in the lobby, there's people everywhere, especially after all the news breaking. Not a lot of places being quiet, but it's usually you can go upstairs and it's an intimate space.
Yep.
And I mean, in theory, you could fly to Baltimore and have a conversation, but that doesn't happen. This is the one time where this becomes like the epicenter for the baseball year. Everyone has to be here. They're going to be here, and you can build something. And it might not get it done today.
Exactly.
But it could get done in a week, 2 weeks, a month.
The groundwork laid is very real. I mean, there have been times where trades that have happened. I actually distinctly remember when we traded for Pablo Lopez, right, through an offseason. I remember being at meetings, whether it's GM meetings or winter meetings, and having those conversations ahead of time and knowing, it might not be at the doorstep yet, but we may get a little bit closer with each of those discussions.
So like that case, I remember back with Pablo, I mean, that's part, you're probably just doing your due diligence at the time, seeing, hey, is there interest here? What's going on? And then once you guys at least get a little bit more, it's like fair to say, like you're a little bit more firm of, hey, we want to try to push forward with this. And then it gets to that next level, right? And then you could, you get to a point of executing the trade, which I guess from the point when you were interested in Pablo, how long did that take?
That's a great question. So in that one, I could take it all the way back to maybe even the trade deadline before, where we check in and we're curious. Are they looking to move them? Could they move them? And then, okay, you don't get much traction. You move on. You get to the off season, you start the conversation again. And in that case, it was a risk at the time. Luis Arias was a guy that was right in the middle of our lineup and won a batting title. He's a tremendous player. And in order to get Pablo, who we thought had a chance to be a true ace of a staff,
for sure,
that was the only way to get him. Yeah. Would we have loved to not traded other players to get there? Sure. But that's not the way it works sometimes. So sometimes you have to take a risk to take on a good opportunity and some real upside. And we feel like, in that case, we got our anchor to our rotation that we were able to sign for the long term.
Yeah, he's a stud. I like his makeup. I love his stuff. And obviously you're able to have a power fastball that you can pitch off of. That's what you want. And in cases too, you acquired someone via trade and that has team control. And then you can decide if you want to extend and all of those pieces, right? And that's where a lot of teams are trying to figure that out right now. Yeah. Like, I'm seeing the name Garrett Crochet thrown out there a lot. I'm seeing, there's different options. Even Sasaki, the reason why it's interesting, because it's not like a normal free agency where it's a little bit more, there's a finite amount that you can spend on a guy like him right now. Then you got to have to. Preston Mattingly described it as it's recruiting. It's like NIL money right now. Yep. And you got to go out there and hope that, why should you come and play for the Phillies, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the part of it. Is that a route you think that teams that you're in your situation, that's more of the opportunity? Because I even think with the Orioles, that's something that they're going to continue to look at this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three avenues to building your team, right? There's free agency, which in our world is usually a supplement. It's usually a complement to what we do. Obviously, we went and got Correa a few years ago. Some unique circumstances allowed us to get him the first time and even the second time. But we felt like we invested in a core member of our team. For us, trade and development are going to be key. right? And we're going to have to constantly evaluate where are we in the moment as guys get closer to free agency. Is that the time where trades have to happen? We've done that over the years, and then we've backfilled in a way. A few years ago at the deadline, we had a tough call to make. Eduardo Escobar, one of the most well-liked players in Twins history.
Yeah.
I mean, awesome guy. But we traded him for a small package of players in Arizona. One of them was an A-ball starter named Joan Duran, right? And 4 years later, he becomes a big leaguer. You don't know it at the time, and it's challenging because you love Escobar. You love it's a hard decision to make when you're not in that competitive position. But you're kind of got to keep one eye on the future while you keep it on the present at the same time.
Yeah, and it can hurt, and it can hurt the fan base at the time, right? Because
no doubt.
Like, damn. And one thing I can go back recently, Trey Mancini got traded at the deadline, and that's a guy that was beloved in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And even the case, in that case at the time, a different one, when Jorge Lopez, you guys acquired Jorge Lopez, and people going, wait a minute, like, we're fighting for a playoff spot.
Right.
And they made a choice. You guys were making a push. Right, if I'm not mistaken,
we absolutely were. We were making a push.
Jorge was having a fantastic year in Baltimore, question. And then in the process, you guys gave up Cano.
Oh, no doubt.
And Cano, he was the wild card.
Yep,
he could be pretty good. We don't know. And in that case, at the time, it might have hurt, but for the long term for Baltimore, it's paid off.
No doubt.
There.
And that's the risk you take, right? When you go through this process, you never know where it's going to land, and when you're giving up players, you hope it works well on both sides. You hope that maybe if you're trading young prospects away and you're getting good major league talent, that the major league talent impacts you now, and that the future prospects, ultimately turn out to be pretty good for that team because it allows for repeat business, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. I could go down a rabbit hole with all this with you. I love these conversations. I think it's fascinating, and being around the game so much, I just love all the intricacies of it. And I think with our audience, what we try to do over and over again is it's not as cut and dry of, hey, sign a guy, trade a guy, or why you make a move. There's so much that goes into it. And you're not always going to get it right either. No. I think that's the part of it. And I mean, show of hands, guilty. How many times I want to get something right and I'm wrong.
Yep.
But that's even in your position. You can do everything and hope for it to work out, and it might not work out. Like we just mentioned the Jorge Lopez. Maybe didn't work out the way that you wanted.
Yep.
But with the Escobar trade, it did.
Right, exactly.
It turned out to be something. What I want to ask you, maybe a little fun things then. What is something through your years of maybe one of your favorite memories that you've had with, if it's favorite memories of, we were seeing the video MLB Network shows of the guy falling into the fountain, which apparently
I distinctly remember that here.
Yeah. So that one, is there any fun memories, doesn't even have to be baseball related, that you remember either at winter meetings here or one of these types of events?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. Those types of moments, obviously, you feel terrible. The guy fell into the pool. But in the moment when you watch it, you're like, oh, my goodness, how did that happen? And it'll burn in your memory forever. We've had fun ones. Actually, one year we went out to a dinner as a group. Yeah. And might have been one of the worst dinners I've had in my entire life. Okay, I mean, it was one of those, the food wasn't cooked. There was a violinist that was coming over and playing right next to us and all this. And we felt like we were in a movie. So that's a memory that sticks with me from winter meetings. Okay,
what'd you order then?
I think we ordered steak.
I was going to say being undercooked. Hey, look, I like a rare steak.
Right.
Medium
might have been
rare.
A little too rare.
It was still mooing, maybe.
Cold.
It might have been, it might have been a little bit too much. Yeah, it's a little aggressive there. But those are the fun things. I'm just imagining it isn't a movie, or they're playing music in front of you, and you'll be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was a wild experience.
Not what I want. And this is going on. I'm sure you're a great person. I don't want this in my ear.
Yep, sure.
That's phenomenal. And maybe one thing before you go, advice on what you've learned through your process here. I asked Preston this same thing. I know he's in a new role this year. But for you, what is one thing that you've learned as being a front office executive that has really stuck out to you during your time?
I think when I came into the game, it was around 2007. I was an intern. I was trying to learn as much as I could about how decisions were made, what information was in the game. And what I did at that time is I leaned into so many mentors. I just kept asking questions. I kept trying to be a sponge. And the thing that I learned is that the second you think you've got this thing figured out, everyone's running past you, right? Yeah. You have to constantly be learning. You have to constantly be curious, asking questions, and be humble. Because I tell you, you just said it. You think you've got a decision made. You think it's right. You're wrong a lot. And you have to be able to rebound from that. So the resilience around it, to try to make a good decision and wake up every day trying to be the best you can be for your team, make the best decisions for your team. Sometimes things don't work out. You got to get off the mat. You can't feel that, realize it didn't go well. You got to come back and you got to keep staying resilient.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example for all those people that are listening from wherever, because we got a lot of people talking about it. You're not going to get it right and for Orioles fans specifically, those are the ones because I can use those examples. Mike Elias has done a lot of great things in Baltimore. Doesn't get everything right, and people can look at moves the best. No matter what you do, you're not going to always get it right.
No,
but,
no doubt.
But you are going to make a lot of right moves, and if you do, you're going to keep yourself in the conversation. And I'd say the Twins right now, you guys are going to have a chance again this year. It wasn't the finish that you wanted last year, but you're right there.
Yep,
you got everything in place. Derek, I appreciate it. So are you going to travel when you come to Baltimore?
I might be in Baltimore this go around. I don't know exactly when we're getting there, but I'll look at the schedule.
Okay, so when you come to Baltimore, we got to do it again.
Awesome.
Well, I appreciate
that sounds
the time.
Great.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks for having me on.